It begins quietly. After the louder part of the evening has loosened its hold, you have come to a little dock at the edge of a quiet canal, where rain touches the glass canopy above you in a steady, soft pattern. Not heavy rain, not hurried rain, only rain soft enough to pad the edges of the world, so every lamp keeps a warm halo, and every reflection lingers a little longer on the water. The city behind you is mostly asleep. A few windows glow above narrow streets. A bakery awning drips at one corner. Somewhere far away, a door closes gently, and the sound is taken in by the rain before it can travel very far. Ahead, tied to the lowest post, waits the ferry. It is small, dark green, and warm-windowed, with a brass lantern hanging from its cabin roof. The lantern is turned low. Its light spreads across the wet boards, across the rope, across the shallow black-blue water, where little rings of rain open and close. No one calls out. No bell rings sharply. The ferry seems to understand this hour. Anyone arriving now has already had enough noise for one day. A narrow gangplank rests between dock and cabin. Beside, it is a folded wool blanket, a blue enamel cup turned upside down on a small tray, and a towel for rain-damp hands. Together, these small things make the ferry feel less like transportation and more like a room that happens to float. You do not need to know the whole route yet. The rain library is beyond the first bend, sheltered under glass roofs and warm windows, and the ferry knows the way. For now, it is enough to have the dock, the lantern, the patient water, and the easy feeling of being expected without being hurried. The step into the ferry cabin is a small, pleasant change in temperature. Outside, the air is cool and clean from the rain. Inside, the cabin holds the gentle warmth of varnished wood, wool, and lamplight. The floor gives one soft sound beneath your feet, and then becomes still again. A curved bench follows the shape of the cabin wall. A narrow table has been fastened beneath the window. The blue enamel cup waits there now, turned upright, and beside it is a small covered pot, breathing a little steam. The ferry keeper is only a quiet presence near the open door, a sleeve, a hand on the rope, a soft nod beneath the brim of a rain hat. There is no face to study. There is no story to explain. The keeper only makes sure the gangplank is steady and the cabin lamp is low. You sit on the bench. The wool blanket is heavier than it looks, with a soft edge that settles across your knees. The cup warms your palms when you lift it. It might be mint tea or lemon balm or only warm water that has borrowed the fragrance of a quiet garden. The exact name can stay unknown. Through the window, the dock has become a painting made of rain and gold. The canopy above it shines with tiny drops. The post, where the rope is tied, looks smooth from many evenings of careful arrivals. The city lamps behind the dock blur into long, sleepy reflections. The keeper steps back onto the stern platform and loosens the rope with a practiced, unhurried motion. The ferry does not lurch. It simply grows lighter against the dock. Wood, water, lantern, rain. The first small drift begins. The ferry leaves the dock so quietly that the change is almost just the feeling of more space around you. The gangplank has been lifted. The rope rests in a neat coil. The hull glides away from the wet boards, and the lantern reflection stretches between ferry and shore until it breaks into small pieces of gold on the water. The canal is narrow at first. Stone walls rise on both sides, softened by moss and rain. Here and there, small windows look down from upper rooms, each one with curtains drawn nearly closed. A potted fern sits on a sill under an awning. A bicycle leans beneath a covered stair. Everything seems to be waiting for morning, each thing resting in its own place. The ferry keeps moving without hurry. You can feel the water under the floor more than hear it. A low, gentle sound like cloth being drawn through a basin. Rain touches at the cabin roof and the window glass. The cup on the table makes no clatter. The blanket stays warm. At the first bend, the city thins. The lamps become fewer. The canal widens a little, and ahead, through rain and mist, there is a softer kind of light. Not a bright light, a library light, low and welcoming. Warm rectangles behind tall panes, a glass roof holding grey beads of rain. A row of sheltered posts standing in dark water. Farther behind them, shapes that might be shelves, balconies, reading lamps, and small bridges between buildings that float very close together. The ferry keeper adjusts the rudder by a careful inch. The cabin turns with the water. The dock behind you becomes another warm memory in the rain, and the first windows of the library begin to warm the night ahead. The rain library does not rise all at once like a grand monument. It gathers itself slowly out of the mist. First, a line of warm windows appears just above the water. Then, a roof of dark glass sloping gently so the rain can travel down it in silver threads. Then, another building beside the first, lower and wider, with balconies under deep eaves and lamps set close to the floor. Between the buildings are narrow channels, all sheltered, all calm, crossed by little wooden bridges and floating piers. The library is after hours, but it is not closed against the night. It has the feeling of a place being put carefully to bed. Lamps are lowered, not extinguished. Chairs are tucked beneath tables. Curtains are drawn halfway. A few wheeled book carts stand with linen covers over their shelves, as if the books have been given blankets too. The ferry enters the outer channel. Its lantern joins the reflections of the windows and mold of the windows, and for a while the water holds so many small lights that it looks like a dark sky turned upside down. You may notice the quiet scale of the place without trying to measure it. A weather room with blue-grey maps. A round moon reading room under a skylight. A greenhouse annex where wet leaves press softly against glass. A long archive wing with quilts folded behind low windows. Farther on, perhaps, more rooms that can remain only shapes tonight. Nothing here asks to be solved. No shelf leans forward. No door waits with a test. The library simply rests on its calm water, breathing rain through its glass roofs. The ferry slows near the first covered pier. A rope touches a post with one soft wooden note. The first stop has arrived gently. The outer pier is roofed in dark glass and supported by posts polished smooth by rain and hands. The ferry rests beside it, close enough that the little gap between boat and boards is only a narrow ribbon of black water. The keeper loops the rope once around a post. It gives a soft creak, then settles. You step from the ferry to the pier slowly. The boards are dry under the roof, though the edges shine where mist has reached them. Lamps are set low along the walkway, each one held inside a round shade the color of honey. Their light does not push far. It only shows the next few steps, the brass rail, the glass door, the water moving quietly below. Inside the door, the library begins with a simple entry room. There is no tall desk, no line, no notice you have to read. Only a low table with folded towels for damp sleeves, a row of hooks for coats, and a shallow bowl where rainwater from umbrellas has gathered in a silver pool. The walls are lined with shelves, but the books here seem to be resting sideways in deep cubbies, their spines turned inward, their pages kept private for the night. A book cart with covered wheels stands near the wall. Its linen cover is tied loosely at the corners. On top is a cedar box filled with bookmarks, each one plain and soft, made of ribbon, pressed paper, or thin pale wood. You do not need to choose one. It is enough to see that the library has made room for small pauses. Behind you, the ferry waits at the pier. Ahead, the first quiet hallway bends toward a soft blue lamplight. The rain continues above the glass, calm and steady. The first hallway is lined with low shelves. They are not the tall, shadowy shelves of a place trying to impress you. They are waist-high and friendly, with broad wooden tops, where little lamps sit under cream shades. The books are arranged loosely by color and size, rather than by any system you have to understand. Blue cloth covers beside grey paper covers, small green volumes beside wide tan ones. A few books lie flat, as if they grew tired of standing and were allowed to rest. The floor is covered by a runner woven in muted blues and mossy greens. It softens each step. Above you, the glass roof catches the rain. The rain makes faint, traveling patterns on the ceiling and upper walls. Every now and then, a drop slides down the outside of the glass and carries a lamp reflection with it. At the end of the hall, a book cart moves by itself for a few inches, then stops, not in a startling way, only as if the floor has quietly suggested it move closer to the wall. Its wheels are wrapped in felt, so even that small movement is almost silent. A folded note card rests on one shelf, but the words are too small and too pale to matter. You can let it remain unread. This library is not asking for attention as payment. You pass a window and see the ferry below, still tied at the pier. Its cabin lamp glows warmly through rain. The blanket waits on the bench. The cup waits on the table. Everything you may want to return to is still there, exactly where it should be. The hallway bends again, and the blue light grows softer, and the blue light the Weather Atlas room is just ahead. The Weather Atlas room is wide and low, with tables arranged like calm islands under brass lamps. On each table lies an atlas opened to a page of rain, not the kind of map that asks you to follow borders, or remember names, or keep track of anything. These pages show only gentle weather as a language of texture. Pale blue washes, grey curls, little ink marks for drizzle, mist, warm fog, roof rain, garden rain, and the soft rain that falls on water already dark. A chair has been pulled out for you at the nearest table. The wood is smooth beneath your hand. The lamp above the atlas has a green glass shade, and the light falls in a quiet circle, leaving the corners of the room dim and kind. Along one wall are many narrow drawers for cards. Their labels are blank from where you stand, or perhaps written too softly to need reading. One drawer is open only a finger's width. Inside are cream cards with rounded corners, each one waiting in a neat stack. No one is asking you to learn the weather. The atlas is here, the way a window is here, or a blanket is here, to give the mind something soft and simple to rest upon. You look at the open page and see a painted canal under rain, a small ferry with one lantern and a library roof made of glass. Perhaps the atlas shows places as they are. Perhaps it only shows the kind of rain a room is holding at the moment. Either way, the page can simply stay open. A slow sound comes from the roof. Rain traveling down glass. Rain meeting water. Rain becoming part of the room without entering it. You sit for a while in the blue-gray quiet, letting the map be only color, and letting the color be only calm. Near the atlas table, the card drawers keep their own quiet order. You may stand beside them for a moment, or only imagine standing. The drawers are built from cedar, and the handles are small half-moons of dull brass. When one drawer slides out, it makes a soft wooden whisper, not much louder than a page turning. Inside are cards the color of cream. Some are blank, some have faint lines, some hold simple marks, too pale to read from any distance. The library seems to understand that nighttime does not belong to instructions or careful reading. A soft rubber stamp rests on a square of felt. Beside, it is a covered ink pad, closed for the night. There is also a little ceramic tray for used pencils, though all the pencils have been sharpened and laid down neatly, as if they too are done with their work. You do not fill anything in. You do not need to record your visit. The drawer can close without keeping track of you, and it does, sliding back into place with a small, satisfied hush. From here, you can see through the tall window to the channel outside. Rain taps the glass and runs down in long, wavering lines. The ferry waits below the pier, its lantern holding steady. A covered book cart stands near the gangplank, and beyond it, another library building floats under a rounded roof. For a few breaths, the room seems to arrange itself into simple pairs: cards and drawers, lamp and table, rain and glass, ferry and water. You can let each pair settle, one after another, until the mind has very little to carry. Then the atlas room dims by a single shade, and the ferry waits for the next slow crossing. The way back to the ferry is the same few steps, and the sameness is pleasant. The low shelves, the entry room, the covered pier, the lamp near the rail, the ribbon of water between boards and hull. Nothing has changed, except that the rain seems even softer now, and the ferry cabin looks warmer. And the ferry cabin looks warmer because you have already there once. You step aboard. The blanket is waiting where you left it, folded back just enough to make a warm place for your knees. The cup has been refilled or warmed, though no one makes a point of it. Steam rises in a thin thread, catches the lantern light, and disappears. The keeper loosens the rope. The boat moves away from the pier, with the same careful quiet as before. This is how the route works. Visit, drift, rest. Visit, drift, rest. No hurry gathers behind any part of it. The Atlas room slides past the window. For a moment, you can see the brass lamps inside and the open book still lying on the table. Then the angle changes and the room becomes only amber squares through rain. The channel ahead curves under a glass bridge. Water gathers the bridge lamps and breaks them gently as the ferry passes beneath. Above, the bridge holds a row of small planters, all dark leaves and rain beads, not moving, except when a drop lets go and falls into the channel with a quiet plink. The ferry keeps its low, even pace, wood underfoot, water beside the hull, rain above the roof, a warm cup close enough for both hands. The next library building waits ahead, rounder and dimmer, with a skylight pale as moonlit milk. The second pier sits beneath a round room with a high glass dome. Rain moves over the dome in slow, silver curves. The moon is hidden behind clouds, but its color seems to remain in the glass, a pale blue-white softness that settles over the room below. From the ferry window, you can see low chairs, round tables, and lamps shaped like small moons resting on wooden stands. The ferry moors with one quiet touch against the pier. This time, the walkway is shorter. It leads directly to a set of curved doors that open inward without a sound. The room beyond is warmer than it looked from outside. A thick rug covers the floor. The chairs are deep and upholstered in faded blue velvet. A row of shelves follows the wall, holding books with silver grey covers and soft cloth bindings. The moon reading room is not trying to teach you about the moon. It only borrows moonlight as a mood. Cool at the glass, warm near the lamps, pale on the edges of the tables, gentle on the curve of a cup. A chair by the window seems to have been arranged for exactly this hour. Beside, it is a footstool, a folded shawl, and a little table with a ceramic saucer. You may sit there for a while and look out over the channel. The ferry waits below, almost directly under the window. Almost directly under the window, its lantern becomes one small amber dot in the blue reflection of the dome. Inside, the books rest in their shelves. A page turns somewhere very slowly, perhaps moved by the warmth of the room, perhaps by the building settling on its water supports. You do not need to choose a book tonight. The room itself is enough. The chair in the moon room accepts you quietly, without ceremony. Its cushions are soft but not too deep. The back supports you gently. The footstool waits at just the right distance. When the shawl touches your lap, it feels lighter than the ferry blanket, smooth and warm from being folded near the lamp. Above, rain patterns the dome. Each drop begins as a small point of brightness, then travels down the curved glass until it joins another drop and becomes a slow line. The lines cross and separate. They make no message. They only move slowly enough to let the eyes soften. On the table beside you is a book already open. The page has no readable title from where you rest, only wide margins, a soft illustration of a window, and a ribbon marker lying across the center. You can leave it exactly as it is. The story inside the book can sleep too. A cup rests on its saucer. The steam rises, turns once in the lamplight, and thins. The scent is faintly floral, faintly green, and mostly warm. Outside the window, the channel drifts by so slowly, it almost seems the room is floating and the water is the one staying still. Now and then, the building gives the smallest settling sound. Wood accepting water, glass, nunchucks, said, accepting rain, shelves accepting the quiet weight of books. You may close your eyes for a few moments here. The ferry will not leave without you. The room will not ask what page you reached. Rain on dome, shawl on knees, lamp on table, water below. It is one of the library's gentlest rooms, and it keeps its gentleness without needing to explain why. After a while, the moon room begins its own settling ritual. Nothing abrupt happens here. One lamp lowers by a shade, then another. The blue velvet chairs seem to deepen in color. The silver, gray books along the curved shelf take on the soft look of stones under shallow water. A small covered cart moves from one side of the room to the other, slow enough that you might not notice until it has already stopped. On it are folded shawls, empty cups, and a little tray of ribbon markers gathered from tables where readers have gone home or drifted away. The room is not tidying because it is strict. It is tidying because every object seems to rest better when it has been returned to its place. The shawls fold, the cups settle, the markers lie flat. The open book on the table remains open, but a thin glass weight has been placed gently at the bottom of the page, so no breeze will turn it before morning. Through the window, the ferry lantern is still there. It shines below like a small amber pause at the end of a very soft sentence. You stand when you are ready, or simply imagine standing. The chair keeps the shape of your rest for a moment, then lets it go. The shawl returns to the back of the chair. The footstool slides only a little under the table. At the curved door, you look once more at the dome. Rain continues down the glass. The room continues under the rain. And The ferry waits below, ready for the next quiet corridor of water. The crossing after the moon room is longer than the first two, but it does not feel far. Fix nothing from anyone. The ferry turns into an inner channel where the library buildings stand close together, their walls reflected in the dark water. Some windows are amber, some are pale blue, some are unlit, showing only rain and the faint shapes of shelves behind glass. You sit in the cabin again. By now, the bench is familiar. The blanket remembers the shape of your knees. The cup has cooled to a comfortable warmth. The lantern flame moves only slightly as the ferry passes beneath a low bridge, then steadies. Above the bridge hang pots of trailing leaves, protected by a narrow roof. The rain reaches them as mist, dotting each leaf with a clear bead. When the ferry passes below, one bead falls from a leaf tip into the channel. The sound is very small, and the water receives it completely. The keeper does not speak. The library does not explain itself. The route is becoming easy to trust. A building slides by on the left, all long windows and low shelves. Perhaps it is a room for quiet newspapers, though no paper is being read now. Another passes. On the right, with a row of cushioned window seats facing the water. In one seat, a folded quilt waits beneath a lamp. In another, a small wooden tray holds an empty cup. You can let these rooms remain unvisited. Ask them from anyone, warm and complete on their own. Not every warm window needs to become a stop. Some comforts are only glimpsed, and that is enough. The ferry continues on quietly. Rain above, water below, library on both sides. The next pier shows green through the glass, like a garden sleeping under a roof. The greenhouse annex is part garden, part catalogue room, and all of it rests under glass. Warm, damp air meets you at the doorway. Not thick, not heavy, only a little softer than the ferry cabin, carrying the smell of wet leaves, terracotta, clean soil, and old paper. The rain sounds different here. It lands on angled panes, runs into narrow gutters, follows a copper rain chain, and drops one bead at a time into a wide ceramic bowl. The room is filled with low shelves instead of tall ones. Some hold small pots of herbs and moss. Some hold seed envelopes arranged in shallow wooden trays. The envelopes are plain cream and grey, with small painted shapes too simple to demand reading. A leaf, a round seed, a curled vine, a tiny flower not quite open. This is not a place for lessons about growing. It is only a place where quiet living things rest beside quiet paper things. A path of flat stones curves through the room. Lamps sit low between the shelves, making the leaves glow gently from below. In the center is a wooden table with a folded linen cloth and a row of clay pots turned upside down for the night. On one chair, someone has left a soft towel, probably for wiping rain from the edge of the door. On another, a pair of gardening gloves lies palm up, as if the hands inside them have simply become too sleepy to continue. You walk the path once, slowly, with no need to reach the end, quickly. Rain chain, ceramic bowl, leaf and lamp, envelope and shelf. At the far window, the ferry lantern shines through the greenhouse glass, warm and blurred, like a small hearth waiting on the water. The rain chain becomes the quietest clock in the greenhouse. Drop. Then pause, drop, drop. Then another pause, a little longer than the first. The water travels from the glass roof into a copper cup, from one cup to the next, down the chain by patient degrees. Each drop falls into the ceramic bowl below and disappears into the small dark surface there. The sound is not sharp. It is rounded by the leaves, the pots, the warm air, and the shelves of paper envelopes. You stand near the table with the turned terracotta pots. Their clay is a muted red-brown, darkened in places by anyone, darkened in places by mist. Some are small enough to fit in one hand. Others are wide and shallow. All of them have been cleaned and set upside down for the night, so no little pool of water waits inside. Beside the pots is a wooden scoop, a coil of twine, and a dish of smooth white markers with no words written on them. The markers are blank, because tomorrow's planting can wait until tomorrow. A leaf brushes softly against another leaf. Somewhere near the glass, a hidden hinge settles. The ferry makes a tiny wooden sound outside as water rocks it against its rope. The greenhouse is alive in a sleeping way. Nothing pushes upward. Nothing asks to be tended. Now, even the seed envelopes are closed, their folded flaps lying flat, their contents quiet in the dark. You may rest your hand on the warm edge of the table. Clay, wood, water, leaf. Clay, wood, water, leaf. The rain chain keeps time without counting it, and the greenhouse lets the night be enough. When you return to the ferry from the greenhouse, the cabin smells faintly of leaves for a little while. Perhaps it clings to your sleeve. Perhaps it has come in with the warm air from the door. The scent is very soft, green, clean, and damp, in the pleasant way of a room where plants are safe from wind and everything has been watered for the night. The keeper releases the rope. The ferry drifts backward by a hand's breadth, then turns into the channel. Green reflections follow along the side of the hull. The greenhouse windows slide past slowly, each pane holding rain, lamplight, and the shadow of leaves. You settle again on the bench. By now, the journey has a shape your body can understand without effort. A room, a return, a crossing. Another room, no part of it presses forward. No part of it asks you to remember where you are in the sequence. The ferry enters a quieter part of the library, where the buildings are lower, and the windows smaller. The water is nearly still here. The sound under the hull becomes deeper and softer, like a slow breath held in a warm room. On the right, behind a row of square windows, you glimpse stacks of folded cloth. On the left, a small reading alcove holds a lamp, a cushion, and a closed-end book with a ribbon trailing from it. Overhead, a covered bridge has no planters this time. Nothing from anyone, only a line of warm lamps under the rail. The blanket on your knees feels a little heavier. The cup is almost empty. The rain goes on with the same patient kindness. Ahead, the blanket archive waits with long, low windows and lights the color of honey through linen. The blanket archive is quieter than the other rooms. It is not silent in an empty way. It is quiet in the way folded fabric is quiet, and wool is quiet, and a room with many shelves can become quiet when every shelf holds something soft. The door opens into a long, low space warmed by amber lamps. Quilts rest in wide cubbies. Wool blankets are folded in careful squares. Linen cloths lie in stacks sorted by shade: mist grey, rain blue, old cream, leaf green, dusky rose. The labels on the shelves are turned away or written too faintly to read. At this hour, color and texture are enough. A wooden ladder rests along a rail, low and steady, only ready for morning hands. A cushioned bench runs beneath the windows. From there, you can see the ferry outside, its cabin lamp blurred by rain. The room smells faintly of cedar and clean cotton. Somewhere very softly, a drawer closes itself by the last inch. A folded quilt settles lower on its shelf. The small movements are domestic, almost sleepy, like a house remembering to relax after company has gone. You sit on the bench. Beside you is a basket of small travel blankets, each rolled and tied with a soft ribbon. One has been left untied, perhaps for you, perhaps for anyone who comes in from the water feeling a little cool around the shoulders. You place it across your lap, or simply imagine doing so. It is warm from the room. It holds no story you have to follow. It is only weight, texture, and shelter. Outside, rain keeps threading the window, and the ferry waits without impatience. The archive has a way of making the mind quieter by giving it simple things to notice, one at a time. A folded edge, a ribbon tie, a cedar shelf, a square of lamplight on linen. You do not need to know where each blanket came from. Perhaps some are used in reading rooms when the rain cools the glass. Perhaps some are kept for the ferry cabins. Perhaps some are brought out for winter mornings when the library opens slowly and the water outside is pale with mist. Tonight, they are simply here, folded, they are simply here and warm in the lamplight. A quilt near your shoulder is stitched in small squares of blue and cream. Another is deep green with a narrow border. A third is grey, almost the color of rain before dawn. The fabric does not shine. It only softens the light that touches it. The bench beneath the window is wide enough to lean back on. The cushion is covered in worn velvet. If you turn your head a little, you can see the rain sliding down the glass beyond your reflection. The reflection itself is soft, only a suggestion. Blanket, lamp, shelf, window. Somewhere in the archive, a tiny mechanism lowers a lamp by one shade. Another lamp answers by dimming too. The room becomes warmer, not darker, as if all the light has decided to move closer to the shelves. The ferry outside rocks once, very lightly. Rope and post, hull and water, rain and glass, wool and lap. You may stay for a few long breaths, letting the archive be mostly texture now, and letting the rest of the library grow quiet around it. The way from the archive back to the pier passes through a narrow passage lined with covered book carts. There is nothing busy about it now. The carts are resting along the wall, their shelves draped in linen, their wheels turned straight, their handles polished by use. A few have small pockets on the sides, holding ribbon markers and soft dusting cloths. The pockets sag gently, as if even they have grown sleepy. The passage has windows along one side, low enough that the water can be seen moving outside. The ferry waits beyond them, but for a while you walk parallel to it, watching the cabin lamp appear between window frames and vanish behind posts. The lamps in this passage are smaller than the others. They sit beneath the shelf edges and light the floor more than the walls. The effect is soothing, like walking along a path of warm stones. At the end of the passage, one cart has not been fully covered yet. Its top shelf holds 3 books lying flat, a folded cloth, and a small wooden sign turned face down so no words can trouble the night. The books look comfortable there. You leave them undisturbed. A door opens onto the pier. Rain sound returns, clearer but still gentle. The air is cooler. The channel is dark and smooth. The ferry's rope makes a low creak as the hull shifts closer to the boards, then rests. You step back into the cabin. The blanket from the ferry is still there, waiting waiting with its familiar weight. The warmth from the archive remains with you for a little while. The route is beginning to grow smaller now, not because it is ending quickly, but because the library is lowering its lights one room at a time. There is one more small stop before the final mooring, though it feels less like a room and more like a pause. The library has made for anyone still awake. The ferry ties beside a tiny alcove built between two larger buildings. It has a roof of glass, a bench under the window, and shelves filled with cups, not display cups. Ordinary cups, useful cups, each with a slightly different curve. Some are blue, some are white, some are brown speckled clay. One is green at the rim, another pale grey like morning rain. None of them need to be chosen carefully. On the bench is a covered pot, warm but not hot, and beside it a tray with a cloth folded underneath. The keeper, or perhaps the library itself, has placed everything where tired hands can find it. You may pour a little into the cup nearest you, just enough to warm your hands. The sound is soft, the steam is softer. The cup fits easily in your palms. Outside the alcove window, the ferry rail shines with rain. Beyond that, the channel turns toward a wide, dim courtyard where the last windows glow under a high glass roof. This little teacup shelf feels like the library's way of saying there is no need to rush even the end of a route. The cup warms, the rain falls. The bench holds you. A row of cups rests on its shelf, each one clean, empty, and ready for another quiet evening. When you set your cup down, it gives one muted sound on the cloth. That is all. A small sound, a warm cup, a last narrow pier, then the ferry again, waiting under its lantern. The final part of the route opens into a courtyard of water. It is surrounded by the library on all sides. But the roof above is glass, so the rain remains visible overhead. The ferry enters slowly, crossing the Darcy, crossing the dark basin toward the warmest row of windows. Reflections gather around the hull. Amber lamps, moon blue skylight, green from the greenhouse, cream from the archive, all softened and stretched by the water. This courtyard feels like the center of the library's sleep. No room is asking to be entered now. The Weather Atlas room has lowered its lamps. The moon room has folded its shawls. The greenhouse has settled around its rain chain. The blanket archive glows softly behind linen-colored glass. The teacup alcove is already dim, its shelves resting in shadow. The ferry keeps to the middle of the basin. Rain moves above, while the water below remains calm. The glass roof takes the sound and spreads it thinly, so it becomes less like falling. and more like a hush laid gently over the whole place. Around the courtyard, little balconies connect one building to another. A lamp on one balcony lowers until it is only a pearl of amber. Another follows, then another. The lights do not go out all at once. They simply become less necessary. You sit with the blanket across your knees and the cup empty beside you. The ferry's lantern glows near the floor. The bench is warm. The water carries the library's reflections without needing to keep them perfect. Everything can blur a little now. Everything can be known loosely, without edges. The ferry turns toward the final post, beneath the broadest window, where a covered bench waits beside the mooring line. The last mooring is almost completely still. The ferry glides beside the post and stops with a touch, so light it seems the water itself has placed it there. The keeper lifts the rope, loops it once, and lets it rest. Sight. No knot is pulled tight. Nothing has to be fastened with effort, because the courtyard is sheltered and the water is calm. The broad window above the mooring looks into a room you have not visited. Inside are only simple shapes: a long table, a few chairs, shelves in shadow, and a lamp, low enough to make the whole room feel half asleep. It is pleasant to leave that room unentered. Some windows are made only to glow from the outside. Beside the post is a covered bench with a folded blanket on one end. The bench faces the water. From there, the entire courtyard can be seen without effort. The glass roof, the dim balconies, the faint shapes of the rooms you passed, and the ferry close enough to touch. You may step onto the pier, or you may remain in the cabin. Either place is equally held by the library. The keeper lowers the ferry lantern by a small turn. The flame becomes rounder. The reflections become softer. Rain continues above the glass, but it has thinned into a finer sound, a sound more felt than heard. The water no longer shows separate windows clearly. It shows only warm color, dark blue, and slow movement. No announcement marks the end of the route. The ferry simply rests. The library simply rests. And for a while, you can rest with them under the warmest window, with nothing left to find. The lamps lower one by one around the courtyard, not quickly, not in a way that asks you to count them. One window becomes softer, then another. A balcony lamp turns from gold to amber to a color almost like warm cream. A reading room beyond the glass keeps one small light near the floor. Enough for anyone passing quietly, not enough to wake the shelves. The ferry's cabin has become a small, steady shadow with a lantern inside it. The bench beneath you, or the bench you imagine beneath you is smooth from many evenings. The blanket has the same patient weight. The empty cup sits where it was set down. There is less to notice now, and that is part of the comfort. Rain, glass, water, lamp, blanket. The words can be that simple. Across the courtyard, the greenhouse is only a green blur. The moon room is only a pale curve under the dome. The Atlas room is a blue-grey memory. The archive is a quiet band of honey-colored windows. All the rooms remain where they are, even if you do not hold them clearly. Even if you do not hold them clearly, nothing needs your attention to remain in place. The ferry stays tied to its post. The books will stay on their shelves. The cups will staying from anyone. The cups will stay on their shelf. The seed envelopes will rest in their trays. The folded quilts will keep their warm, square shapes in the amber dark. The rain goes on softly above all of it. A tiny ripple moves away from the hull and disappears under the pier. Another lamp lowers, then another. The courtyard accepts the deeper, quiet, without needing to close completely. The courtyard grows softer, without changing very much. This is the gift of this part of the library. It does not need to offer another room, another shelf, or another path. It only lets the same quiet things become slower, and easier to hold. The rain on the glass roof has thinned into a delicate brushing sound. The drops are smaller now. They gather in faint silver trails, then fade into the gutters hidden along the edges of the panes. Below, the water takes the sound and turns it into stillness. From the ferry cabin, the whole courtyard is a circle of dim windows and softened reflections. The Atlas room is somewhere behind one blue-grey glow. The moon room is somewhere beneath a pale dome. The greenhouse is only a muted green shadow. The archive is a low amber line. None of these places need to be visited again. They can remain where they are, resting in the order the night has given them. The empty cup is on the table. The blanket is warm. Across your knees, the lantern is turned very low. The rope at the post holds the ferry with no strain at all. A ripple touches the side of the hull and moves away. Another follows after a long pause. Then, the water is smooth again, carrying the window lights in long, sleepy shapes. You may let the courtyard become less exact now, not a map, not a place to remember carefully. Only rain above glass, water below lanterns, and a ferry resting where the library is warmest. The story is nearly still here, and nearly still is enough. The bench beneath the warm window becomes the whole world for a little while. It has a back just high enough to lean against. The wood is smooth under your hands. The blanket is folded over your knees or resting beside you. whichever feels easier to imagine. The window above gives off a low amber glow, but the room behind it remains quiet and indistinct. You do not have to decide whether to stay on the bench or return to the ferry cabin. You do not have to decide whether the library will open in the morning, or whether the rain will continue, or which room would be first if you came here again. The story can hold those details without asking you to hold them too. From the bench, the ferry is only a few steps away. Its rope rests around the post. Its cabin lamp is low. The cup is on the table. The wool blanket on the bench inside is folded in a soft, familiar shape. From the bench, the courtyard is quiet in all directions. Glass roof above, dark water below. Warm windows around, rain touching everything gently, and the library answering by becoming still. You may let the root loosen now. The dock can drift closer to the Atlas room. The moon room can drift beside the greenhouse. The blanket archive can fold itself around the teacup shelf. The ferry can be both here and moving slowly, because sleepy places do not always keep strict maps. What matters is the feeling of being carried, then sheltered, then allowed to rest. The rain library has done that much. It has carried you over water. It has you over water. It has shown you warm rooms. Now it lowers its lamp very slowly. And now the story can become very small. Only the rain on the glass roof. Only the ferry tied beside the final post. Only the warm window above the bench and the dark water holding its reflection. You do not need to follow the ferry back through every channel. It knows the way. It knows the outer pier, the low shelves, the weather Atlas room, the moon room, the greenhouse, the blanket archive, the little teacup shelf, and the first quiet dock at the edge of the city. It can remember the route for you. You can let the rooms drift together, now, softly and out of order. A blue-grey Atlas, open, under a lamp, a chair beneath a rainy dome, a copper rain chain over a ceramic bowl, folded quilts in warm shadow, a row of cups resting on a shelf, a lantern reflected in water, a rope around a polished post, rain, glass, water, lamp, rain, glass, water, lamp. The library does not need to close all the way. It can remain half-lit, somewhere beyond attention, its shelves resting, its windows warm, its ferry waiting for whoever comes quietly to the dock on another rainy night. The keeper has stepped away, or perhaps only lowered the lantern and sat where the cabin is darkest. The water is still. The roof holds the rain. The bench holds the blanket. The story holds the last few images loosely, without asking anything more. If the ferry moves again, it moves gently. If the rain continues, it continues softly. If the library dreams, it dreams of warm rooms, low shelves, covered carts, and water that never needs to hurry. And here, beneath the warmest window, the night can remain quiet. The ferry can rest, the library can rest, and the story can lower its lamp until there is only the rain, and the water and the soft dark, carrying everything onward without a sound.